I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about Yolanda, who was a participant in my 12-year study of youth literacy learning in and out of school in Detroit, Michigan. One day during an interview, Yolanda showed me a text that her mother had given her. Now, Yolanda loved this book. She loved that it had big words. She loved that it was in Spanish. She loved that she could talk to her mother about this book. She was excited to read and write outside of school. While she was talking, I noticed a biology textbook at her elbow. So I said, Yolanda, what do you think of this book? Her face crumpled. She rolled her eyes and she said, oh, it is so boring. Why? I asked. And this is what she said. It gets you brain dead. From the mouths of babes come words of wisdom about youth literacy learning. Yolanda was not alone. We studied thousands of young people over this time period, and time again, they told us about books and other kinds of texts they read outside of school with power, with proficiency, and with passion. Inside school, however, was a completely different story. In school, they read science texts, history texts, mathematics texts, and literature texts with a struggle. They struggled to read and write with proficiency. We need to change this reality for young people. We need to restructure schools if we're going to take seriously the idea that we're preparing all young people to read and write and to be prepared for life beyond school. We need to change schools to get more and better texts in the hands of kids. We need to better educate our teachers. We need to connect to the lives of our youth. And we need to extend the time that they have to learn. In the remainder of my talk, I'm going to ask you to listen for a few points. One is that literacy learning is never ending. The second is that specialized literacy learning is like entering new cultures. And the third is that literacy learning requires an apprenticeship. Now, there's a common assumption that young children learn to read in elementary school. And then, as they grow up, they read to learn in secondary schools. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, all people are always learning to read and reading to learn. And especially when we're entering new contexts, we're learning to read. It's almost like entering a new culture. There's no way that learning to read with this text is going to prepare someone to read to learn from this text. Now, don't panic. I'm not going to ask you to read this text. Even a quick glance can tell you that there are many unfamiliar words and ways of using words in this text. It is like entering a new culture. So here's the thing about entering a new culture. It takes time to learn the language and the rules of the culture. It really helps to have a cultural insider who can show you the way, who can help you navigate the language and the rules. It really, really helps to do the things that people in the culture do. So that's what we need to do for our young people. They need to be engaged in the practices of the disciplines. They need to participate in reading and writing disciplinary texts if we're going to expect them to learn to read and write those texts. They need teachers who are disciplinary insiders, who not only know how to engage them in meaningful disciplinary inquiry, but also know how to teach them to read and write those texts, because they are novices in the culture. And finally, they need time to be able to do that work. They need an apprenticeship. Now, you may be scratching your heads and saying, Elizabeth, our schools aren't really structured that way, are they? I mean, is there really time in most middle and high school classrooms in those 50 or 75-minute blocks to do meaningful inquiry? Are teachers really disciplinary insiders? Do they know how to read and write the text of the disciplines? Do they know how to teach young people to do that? Well, the short answer is no. But the good news is that we can change that. So what should we do? We need to first get better texts into the hands of teachers and students. Study after study tells us that not only are most texts commonly adopted in secondary schools very poorly written, they bear no resemblance to the text of the disciplines. Second, if we can get those texts into people's hands, then we need to educate teachers to be able to use those texts with children. We need to help them learn how to teach young people of many different literacy backgrounds and skills how to read the texts of the disciplines. Third, we need to make more time in schools, and we could do that in two ways. One, we could better protect the time we already have. We could stop the constant interruptions and the capricious curricular reforms that keep people from sustained learning and teaching time. We can also extend the school day and extend the school year so that all youth have opportunities to engage in sustained inquiry, not just those who are privileged enough to afford it. We can do a better job of connecting our youth literacy skills to the skills we expect them to learn in schools. And again, we have to help teachers learn how to do that. We need more teacher education, not less. If we do these things, our youth are going to be far more engaged. They're going to actually practice reading the texts of the discipline, so they'll learn them more effectively. They will be prepared for college and careers, to be sure, but more important, they will be prepared to be citizens in the world. Thank you.